Hello folks, this is David Hurley of EasyChessTips.com, your pub chess bluffer, wishing you a happy, prosperous and successful, unless you're playing me at chess, New Year 2021. And this is my first chess video of the year, so let us also celebrate that. And get on with the video. Now, in this video, I'm going to attempt to demonstrate a small part of my 1d4 mnemonic memory system in action. I have here a bunch of memory cards. These two rings here have a total of 184 variations of the 1d4 opening repertoire as taught by John Watson in his book, A Strategic Chess Opening Repertoire for White. I've been all through the book, extracted 184 variations. I'm not using the whole series of moves. It's the first 5 to 15, sometimes a little bit more moves of any given variation. And I've plugged those 184 variations into the memory system, the mnemonic memory system. It's called the major system. What you do in the major system is that you allocate each of the digits a letter or series of letters, and then they're all consonants. And then you can use those consonants to create words that help you remember numbers. That at least is the idea. So, for example, I don't know, give me a number 34. Well, 3 is M and 4 is R. So it could be something like Mary or Maria or Mirror. In my case, it's actually Mirror. And by remembering that the 34th variation is called Mirror, that visual association helps me to remember what the variation is. So what I'm going to do in today's video is go through the first 10 variations. We start, so in fact, there'll be just these ones here, one digit, the first 10 until we get to the first 9, and then 10 is toes. T, S, to Z. So I use the word toes. So my first 10 images are T, Noah, May, Ray, Law, Jaw, Key, Fee, P. You'll notice these words have only one active consonant or sounded consonant in them. So Law, the W we completely ignore. Ray, the Y we completely ignore. They're not. We can't hear them, so we don't need to count them. So yeah, we don't a word like none, for example, or here, because that would be NN, which is in fact 22. My 22nd variation is the none, which incidentally is the Slav, or the first variation in the Slav. But that is by the by. Let's move over to the board and take on the challenge. So we're going to start with number 1. Here it is. And number 1 I've played out many times, so it won't be too much of a memory challenge anyway. But number 1, this is what I think of when I remember that number 1 is T. It is the Queen's Gambit declined. And this is the variation that John Watson recommends. The exchange here. And then the old bish comes out here, bringing this bish out. They're all coming out for a cup of tea, you see. What happens next? I suppose it's E3, C6, and then the old bish. He's come out for his cup of tea as well. So yeah, where's my cup of tea? And when the king sees the old bish coming, he thinks, I don't want any of his company, so he goes and hides in his castle. Final guest arrives. There's always one slow coach. And the doorman says, hello, hello, what's going on over here? That's not really a part of my memory system. I just made that up. Right now, queen comes over here. Rook comes across, and it's at this point when the king castles. He hops back home. And out comes the little old pawn. That we will now verify by checking that if this sequence of moves matches what I have here for the T. Queen's Gambit declined. So let's do it. D4, D5, C4, E6, knight to C3, knight to S6, C takes D5, E takes D5, bishop to G5, bishop to E7. That's the fifth move there. There is an alternative C6 also you could play, but we're focusing just on bishop to E7. E3, C6, bishop to D3, castle, knight to F3, knight B to D7, queen C2, rook to E8, castles. Where are we? Over here where my finger is. Castles, knight to F8, H3. Okay, no problem. Let's clear that away. Go straight on to the second of 10. And this one, number 2, is called the Noah, because N is 2. Noah. And we're in the Queen's Gambit declined territory still. There's in fact 16 variations in this part of the mnemonic memory system as extracted from John Watson's book. Okay, this is where the change takes place. Now, this one is called the Noah. Incidentally, all the pieces have names based on the squares they start on, and the squares have place names based on a combination of the file letter and the code letter for the rank number. If that makes sense. I think it does, doesn't it? So, for example, this square here where the knight has just come from, who incidentally we're calling Noah, as this is the Noah, this square G8 is Gifu, because 8 is F and the square is G. So Gifu is a prefecture in Japan. I live in Japan, so for me it's kind of common knowledge. You can create one of these systems based on your own geographic experience, whatever resonates with you as much as possible. And who is a famous person from Gifu? Well, it's old Nobunaga, the Japanese warlord in the Warring States era. So this knight I usually call Nobunaga, a most suitable black knight's name. I think the name of a black knight should be Nobunaga. But in this variation, Nobunaga and Noah have struck up a friendship. And the knight here, as I remember it, it's Noah takes Nobunaga on a voyage. And so in this case, where are we? He's just taken. In T, it's the pawn that takes. But in the Noah, it's Noah's Ark sailing around and gobbles up that pawn there. And what do we do in response? We send a white dove out to have a look. And the ark sails on. Now, if you remember the Bible story, the ark comes to rest on Mount Ararat. No, my friends. The ark, we discover, actually comes to rest in Cambridge. C3 is M. There we go. The ark, did you know? The ark came to rest in Cambridge, where it and all its inhabitants were promptly put to the sword by the friendly local inhabitants. And that was the end of that. Now, you may also remember the story of old Noah, who was not put to the sword, getting drunk after he planted that good old vineyard, a man after our own heart in many ways. Got rather drunk, and he'd been drinking with no clothes on, as you sometimes do in the heat of the day when you're sat in your tent, and he fell asleep. And one of his sons came in and saw him naked, which was a terrible thing to have done, and he was punished for it. Now, here is some advice for poor old Noah. If you'd only been wearing your Y-fronts, my friend, you could lie sideways in your tent with your Y-fronts on, and there wouldn't have been a problem. You'd have been okay. Let us continue with the variation. The rook comes out. The queen comes out to have a look, perhaps having a look at Noah lying there in his Y-fronts. This pawn and this pawn are looking a bit vulnerable. So we guard the C pawn, leaving this pawn free for this queen here to gobble up. And that's fine, because we now bring out our white Noah, I suppose, because in this variation, we're giving up a pawn for development and control of the center. And here it is. How did we do? I think we did okay, actually. Let's have a look. We got d4, d5, c4, e6, knight to c3, knight to f6, c takes, knight takes, that's Noah, e4, knight takes c3, b takes c3, c5, rook to b1, where are we? Queen to a5, bishop to d2, got an exclamation mark there, queen takes a2, knight to f3. Okay, no problem. On we go. The third variation in our memory system is the May, T Noah May. And it's quite fortunate, really, when I started doing this, making this system, that Theresa May was the Prime Minister. Anyway, the May, how does it go? We're still in Queen's Gambit declined territory, so these moves will be familiar. But Prime Minister May over here, she has a word with the bishop, you see. Now, when that happens, the convocation of bishops occurs. So I call this variation the May bishops, and that's kind of enough for me to remember without too much storytelling, though, who knows, I may be, oh yeah, I think I balls it up already, actually. Let's get back to c3. I always balls this one up because I'm always amused by this idea of May's bishops. So the bishop comes out to there, as I said. There is then that, of course, that pawn exchange there. Let's delete from here and make it there we go, make it the main variation. Okay, the pawn exchange takes place, at which point the white bishop comes out, saying, hey, can I be included in this convocation of bishops at 10 Downing Street or something? What happens next? The pawn, there's a couple of things that could happen here for this variation. When the pawn comes here, the queen simply comes out here to prevent the third bishop joining. I mean, you can't have too many bishops in the convocation. It'd be terrible. There is another alternative up here, which is in the case of knight here, we'd have e3 move. Okay, let's see how we did with that. A bit of a wobble in the middle. T Noah. Number 3, May. Number 3, May. Here we go, the May bishops. And we find that it is indeed d4, d5, c4, e6, knight to c3, bishop to e7, c takes, e takes, bishop to f4, c6, queen to c2, and over here is the other variation that I mentioned. Okay, on we go to number 4. 4 is Ray. 4 is the Ray, the Tarrasch Ray, isn't it? The Rubinstein variation of the Tarrasch Ray, as I call it, the Tarrasch. Okay, so we're still in Queen Gambit declined territory, but as this is the Tarrasch, which sounds a bit like Ray, there's that Ray hidden in there, Tarrasch Ray, we get this variation here. Then we still take. And at this stage, when all the taking is done, we bring out the knight. Out comes this knight. We're going to end up with a collection of 4s. Remember, this is the 4th variation. So it's good to notice these, where these things all kind of match up coincidentally with the memory system. So we have, this is the 4th variation. We have 4 pawns to a piece. We have 4 knights. So the theme of 4 continues. But the Ray, incidentally, this bishop down here, f1, f or v, I call this Venice. No, I don't call it Venice, sorry, it's f1, it's the Vatican. Number f2 is Venice, Vatican and Venice. The Vatican, so we need a suitable pope for the Vatican. So I have here Pope Boniface VI. Pope Boniface VI. Now he travels over to Ghent, G2, and he shines his benevolent rays all the way across to actually to Avalon and Arthur's seat over there. So there we are, Pope Boniface, jolly good pope if ever there was one, shining his why can't I remember that word? Beneficent? No, yes, maybe. Benevolent rays. Ray, the Tarash defense. Okay, did we get it right? Enough of this blather about Boniface, the Boniface beneficent blather. D4, D5, C4, E6, knight C3, C5, C takes, E takes, knight to F3. Yes, that happened. Knight C6, G3, knight to F6, bishop G2. Okay, on we go. That was the ray. Now we come to the fifth one, which is the law. Now the law, we think of a rather strict bobby on his beat, you see. And the Baltic, this is the Baltic law. They do things differently in the Baltic. No. Mouse slip. Get out there. We're still in a form of the Queen's Gambit declined. But this, my friends, is the Baltic law. And out in the Baltic, they send their bobbies out on the beat very early. You see, those law-abiding Balts, but the bobby didn't notice a bit of crime going on right in front of his nose. However, he's got his eye on this horse over here. Yeah, what's going on down here? But the Queen comes out and says, I'll check the king in that case. And we get this nice little combination here. What we're going to do about that, we're going to nobble the bishop. Okay, and that's it. A nice simple little variation to get us set up in the Baltic. So, let's see, the Baltic law. The Baltic law, as you can see, we get through this one very quickly. D4, D5, C4, bishop to F5, C takes, bishop takes B1, Queen checks on A4, C6 to defend, D takes C6. Nice little exclamation mark, question mark there by John Watson. Knight takes, rook takes. End of story. Actually, that's just the beginning of the setup has only just been completed. We come to the next one, jaw. J, number 6, J. It's another variation of the Baltic defense. This time, it's the queens who have a good old jaw. Out comes the bobby on his beat. The same thing happens. The queen comes out, but now the two queens want to have a bit of a jaw, which actually here is the same as war. And that's the variation, as simple as that. Nice and simple, the old Baltic to remember. The Baltic law, D4, D5, C4, bishop to F5, C takes, bishop takes, Queen takes, C, Queen to, wait a minute, where have we got to? Queen to A4 check. The Baltic law, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one there. The jaw, it's exactly the same up to there. Exactly the same. D4, D5, C4, bishop to F5, C takes, bishop takes, Queen to A4, Queen to D7, Queen to takes D7 check, Knight takes D7, Rook to B1. Nice and easy. Okay, law jaw key is the next one. It's the Chiggarin key. It's always nice to use the patterns on the board in this memory system. There's very often a way that you can find associations by the patterns of movements. The Chiggarin, actually, there we go. The Chiggarin is this rather nice little move here. What we're going to do, well, we're going to do that. What happens next in the Chiggarin? I do believe that causes the old bish to come out. And before we do anything else, we better get this knight out here. And then in this variation, we have this move here. And this completes our Chiggarin setup. Now, it's called the Chiggarin key. And I find, you have to use your imagination a bit, but I find this shape here is a nice key shape. We've got the key handle, And here is the invisible shaft of the key, but here is the sticky outy bit of the key, you see. So this, for me, is the Chiggarin key. Now, in addition, and this is really using your imagination, I think, forcing the shapes to help you remember. Some of the absurdities of this memory system are really what help you remember. This is called the Chiggarin key, and we have made a K shape. Here we go. Let's see if we can draw it on the board without screwing everything else up. I'm going to draw a K on the board. The Chiggarin keys K. It's a bit of a kicking K, but there you are. It's kind of there in a way, the Chiggarin key. And here, while we're in drawing mode, is the key. Yay. Number 7, the Chiggarin key, D4, D4, D5, C4, knight C6, knight to F3, bishop G4, knight C3, E6, bishop to G5. The knight gives the key to the black bishop. That's how I remembered it originally, but I just remember the image of a key now. Okay, so let's move on to the phi. Let's clear that. So the Chiggarin phi, again, the Chiggarin setup. We have this nice little second move of the knight. That causes us to move this knight as a precaution. And in the Chiggarin phi, we get the quick advance of E5. Which is precisely why in this Chiggarin setup we move the G knight before we move the C knight. Our standard setup in this repertoire is D4, C4, and knight to C3. However, this protects against that. Incidentally, this knight has two names in my system. He's either Falstaff or Charles Dickens. The reason why is that this G1 is G-t or G-d, and Dickens lived at Gad's Hill, that's Gad, and incidentally in Gad's Hill in North Kent there is a pub called the Falstaff, and there is an association with the Jolly Knight, which is rather nice since this is a knight. It is poor old Falstaff who must pay the fee, and he takes the chop. And so the fee is a rather bloody affair. Now the queens also pay the fee. Queen, that is, these two queens are both called Eleanor. This is Eleanor of Castile at D1 and Eleanor de Montfort at D8. And in this case, Eleanor of Castile sacrifices herself to draw Simon de Montfort across to D8. We're not done yet. There's one more move, which is E4. Okay, so that was the fee. We saw a lot of fee paying there. Here it is. So it goes D4, D5, C4, knight C6, knight F3, E5, knights, knights. There's mayhem going on in the middle of the board. D takes E5, D takes C4. Okay, we're there. Sixth move, queen takes D8, king takes D8, E4. Okay, so we got two more to go. The third variation of the Chiggarin, which is the P. Now this one we remember simply by imagining a green pea being rolled down the aisle. And that's a nice handy way of remembering the key difference. So it's again this aggressive E5 move. Poor old Falstaff still has to pay that fee, as does this knight over here, incidentally, is Montgomery. This is Bovington over here, B8, Bovington. So it's Montgomery of Alamein who pays the ultimate sacrifice. Now, in the fee, there's bloodshed over here among the pawns, but the P rolls down the aisle where it could be clobbered by the queen if she wants to sacrifice herself. It would be better to avoid that. And we have e4 once again. So you have this nice little L shape in the board. And that's the setup. After that, whatever happens, happens. Let's just see how it goes. The aim here is not to remember every single variation of variations of variations and never think for yourself in chess. The aim is simply to find a way through to a good setup in any given situation. And so here we are, a 6-mover, the P. Chiggarin rolls the P down the D file. Okay, 1d4. Let's get back up there. d4, d5, c4, knight c3, knight to f3, e5, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, d takes e5, d4, e4, boom, boom. Now we're into our last variation. And this is the 10th variation. And number 10 is T for 1, and S or Z for the 0. And that I call the toes. And I imagine in this variation, our knights are like trippy toes. Everything here is a little bit like toes tripping around each other. It is the Albin counter gambit. And here we have 4 little toes come out to play. The gambit is accepted. This is a bit like the Chiggarin P. I mean, you can kind of also thread together some of these variations with little things they have in common, even when this is nothing to do with the Chiggarin. But there is that little link with the Chiggarin P we just saw. Now what happens? Okay, we have Trippy Toes Knight number 1. Imagine Falstaff doing a nice little ballet routine or something. Trippy Toes Knight number 2 and Trippy Toes Knight number 3. He'll be on his way over here to add pressure to that pawn. And that is as far as I've gone with the Albin counter gambit, just a 5-mover, nice and easy. And let's check that I got it right. Toes, yes, the trippy toes. d4, d5, c4, e5, d takes e5, d4, knight to f3, knight c6, knight b to d2. There we go, done and dusted. Now, because I've just gone through from 1 to 10, there's a lot of relationship between all of these variations. They're all forms of the Queen's Gambit declined. The next, okay, I'll just show you one more, because the next one in the series, no, I won't. Next one, it goes on to 16. There are 16 variations of the Queen's Gambit declined. Then with number 17, the tack, we get into the Queen's Gambit accepted. But I'll go through those in another video. It just gives you an idea of what I'm doing with this crazy memory system. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and maybe it'll inspire you to, or cause you to flee from creating a memory system of your own for your own opening repertoire in chess. That's all from me, David Hurley of easychesstips.com on this January the 2nd, 2021.